Good evening, everyone. It's 7:05. I will make a motion to open the June 30th meeting of the Hanson Finance Committee.
Second.
Seconded by Amy Wright. We'll do a roll call vote, so I'll go down the list of members present. Patrick Powers.
Aye.
Michelle Werdeman.
Aye.
Amy Wright.
Aye.
Kevin Sullivan. Aye. Okay, thanks, guys. On the line right now, we have Town Accountant Todd Hassett. We're going to just jump a little bit out of order because I told Todd we wouldn't keep him more than 20, 30 minutes at the most. So we have some departmental transfers, which I sent to all of you earlier. And there were 3 of those. So what we'll do is I'll go through them. We'll start with the first one. We'll read it. If there are questions, we can ask Todd. Otherwise, we can vote them all as a group at the end if there are no questions, unless someone wants to hold them. So I'll start off with the first one. Transfer of appropriations from Planning Board Clerical Support to Assessors Clerical Support, Treasurer Clerical Support, Appeals Clerical Support, Public Property, Custodian, Inspection Building Salary, Inspection Clerical Support. And the explanation on this one is it's the extra workday not budgeted for the leap year, and it's a few hours short. And as I recall, after talking to Todd, we had the leap day that we had to account for, but it also didn't account for the fact that it was the late day. It was a Tuesday, correct, Todd? That they run the longer hours.
Right. So when we met last time, I had asked, the committee had approved a transfer for these same departments, and I had simply taken the number of days left divided by people's weekly pay, only to realize that the last day of the fiscal year was the long day, Tuesday, when town halls open late. And we ended up short a couple of hours on a handful of staff people. So it was a math error, I guess we could call it.
So, okay, great. Are there any questions regarding the first transfer? And Mike, I see you just joined us, so we can give you a minute to get caught up. The transfer amount is $174. It was exactly the one we talked about last time.
So does the microphone work this time?
It does. We can hear you.
Look at that.
Hello.
All right. Any questions on this first transfer? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next transfer. Transfer of appropriations from Public Buildings Facility Management in the amount of $10,000 to Legal Services. And it is additional. The explanation is additional services due to COVID pandemic, a portion of which may be reimbursable. I know some of these COVID ones are reimbursable, but as with anything with the government, we may not see that money for quite some time. Todd, did I miss anything here?
No, other than I think we won't have to wait as long as you think on these particular reimbursements. These will be applying through the Plymouth County CARES Act funds. And there's a process, of course, but it's much quicker. We should have the reimbursement before the end of the summer, but certainly not by the end of the fiscal year, which is today. So the process is a little different than our typical storm reimbursement process through MEMA or FEMA.
Okay.
Yeah, but.
Perfect. Questions regarding this transfer? Seeing none and not hearing any, we will move on to the next one and the final one. 3, right, Todd, we said?
Yes, the final one. Yep.
Final transfer of appropriations from Veterans Benefits in the amount of $7,500 to VNA Services in the amount of $7,500. The explanation, additional services due to COVID pandemic, a portion of which may be reimbursable. Anything to add on this one, Todd?
No, again, this is visiting nurse additional services that the Board of Health required. As you know, this is a separate line appropriated by town meeting, very specific for these services. The Board of Health has secured a state grant to cover some additional services for this purpose. And what they're not getting through that grant, we will be applying for through the Plymouth County CARES grant for reimbursement to the town for these extra services. And the veterans benefits, as you probably know, the caseload has been less in the last couple of years. So they actually had access their budget to allow us to do this transfer.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Are there any questions for Todd regarding this transfer? Seeing none and not hearing any, that is all the transfers. I will. Any questions on all three? Todd, did you have a question?
I'll wait till you take a vote. I apologize. I'll wait till after your vote.
No, no problem. I will entertain a motion to approve all three transfers for the amounts indicated on the transfer.
Motion to approve.
Amy Wright makes a motion to approve.
Aye.
Second from, oh, there you go.
Second from Pat Powers.
Approve.
We'll do a roll call vote. I will go down the list. Mike Dugan,
Aye.
Pat Powers,
Aye.
Michelle Werdeman,
Aye.
Amy Wright,
Aye.
Kevin Sullivan. Aye. All three are approved. And Todd, I'll sign those and get them back to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would just let the committee know we have two possible additional transfers for you to consider sometime between now and mid-July. One relates to a vote the selectmen are considering at their meeting tonight, which is to allow town employees who were not able to use some of their vacation leave due to COVID-related services to buy back unused vacation leave. And in some of those cases, if this is approved, some of those smaller departments don't have funds budgeted for vacation buybacks. This would be an exception. It would not be a practice that would be allowed to continue, sort of a one-time type offer that they're, I believe, going to vote on tonight. So I don't have a sense of who might want to take a buyback and what departments will be short, but we may need to come back to do another transfer to cover these. And the other thing is we did have at the upcoming town meeting, we did have an article that the selectmen are going to pull, which had to do with the possibility of subsidizing the transfer station to get through the rest of this year, FY20. And I'll be working with the Board of Health over the next week or so. I'm not sure to what extent they're going to need it, but their revenue is coming in a bit shy. And I've just got to see how that compares to their expense side. So it's possible we were going to ask town meeting to consider that, but given the fact that the town meeting's outside in the evening and we're trying to keep the articles to a minimum. I know John is working with the selectmen to shrink each of the two town meeting warrant number of articles. So this is one we would opt to handle through some type of transfer.
Great, thank you, Todd. Okay, that sort of covers the end of the year transfers, ones that might be coming up over the next few weeks here. We will move on while we have Todd. I sent out, if everyone got them, the updated sources and uses, as well as the updated general fund fiscal year 2021 PDF files. Did everyone get those? I know it was kind of, I apologize for the last minute. Everyone get a chance to take a look at them at least.
Yep.
Sure did. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess what we can do is we'll take a look at the sources and uses first. Take a look at that. If anyone has any questions about any of the numbers, obviously I think we're all well aware, the override did not pass. So we will have to submit a balanced budget at town meeting less that amount. So we can take a look at this sources and uses FY 2021 budget that Todd passed on. So we're looking at the FY 2021 preliminary column. Anything you want to point out off the top, Todd?
Yeah, so what I'd like to do for the committee is just walk you through the changes. And what I did was I highlight, hopefully it came through in your PDF copies. I highlighted anything in a pale green that would represent a line that had changed. And there's a couple that I have in bright yellow, which are still pending. So that was sort of my color coding thinking. But essentially, just to walk you from the top down, just talking about the highlighted items. I have conferred with the assessor's office, and the new growth estimate that we had used earlier in the budget process is not coming to fruition. There are a lot of building permits that have been issued and some activity, but it has been slow this spring and will likely see better growth in the next fiscal cycle. So we've had to drop that down some. Sort of related to that, what we did was we increased the use of the ambulance fees. We increased that by 100,000 to try to keep the budget, at least the revenue side, somewhat intact. And we do believe we can sustain that level of support going forward at 525,000 rather than the 425 that was previously proposed. The other thing that I want to point out under the cherry sheet receipts, prior to this, we were just using the governor's proposed budget, which came out in late January. Of course, the state's revenue picture has changed substantially since that time. And we did poll over 25 communities, and just to get a sense of what other folks were doing in terms of estimating revenue, state revenue for next year. And, as you can imagine, it's all over the gamut, from people still using the governor's budget to people estimating a 20% reduction in state aid. So we're coming in sort of in the middle here. It's about a 12% reduction. And fortunately, almost at the same time, we were notified that we're eligible for a state grant that has to do with the new regional dispatch that Hanson has joined. And it's a multi-year grant. In the first 3 years of the grant will fully fund the town's share of the assessment to be part of the region. So that's a $200,000 savings, which you'll see when we go through the budget lines as a $200,000 reduction to communications expense. So the state aid's down about 185,000, but we're able to reduce the communications budget by 200 because of obtaining this multi-year grant. I believe in years 4 and 5, the town starts to have, there's a cost sharing between the state. And I don't have those exact numbers with me, but it's a great program, not to mention all of the capital improvements we're getting the benefit of, which I believe Chief Thompson told me was in the neighborhood of $1.2 million as part of this whole regional program that the town has partnered with. The lines for free cash operating relate specifically to the subsidies for the 2 enterprise funds. We have made some suggested reductions to the recreation budget, some of which are going to result in less subsidy, and some of which are less revenue they anticipate because of the closing this summer. What's still highlighted in yellow is to what extent we'll agree on subsidizing the transfer station operation. So right now, what's in there is what you've had all along for the transfer station, but I know there's some discussion that given the fiscal situation that, maybe we need the Board of Health to revisit maybe the days the transfer station is open or other things. The other major reduction is we're showing a lot less free cash to be allocated to the capital plan. And that is because there's been a decision to, again, because the override failed, to not pursue a number of the capital items, to defer them until the fall. So there are only, I think, 4 items of the 9 or 10 that need ideally to be accomplished over the summer. For example, the roof at the school, the roof repairs before school opens, the wiring that's needed at Camp Kiwanee. So there's some things while those facilities are closed that are ideal to still pursue with funding from free cash. But we're taking almost $400,000 off the table and suggesting that perhaps when we know more in the fall, we'll defer these. Those projects didn't need to happen in July or August. So I think that pretty much highlights the changes in the single page sources and uses. And in the following 3-page document that looks like what we present to town meeting, again, I highlighted in pale green any of the budgets that were reduced as part of the budget balancing exercise. And it's in the column entitled Administration Recommends. The selectmen have not taken a position on this. John did tell me they were discussing this very topic tonight. So what you have in your handout simply shows, excuse me, since the override failed, the operating assessment for the regional school is reduced in this column by that same corresponding 800,000. Not to say that's how it's going to play out, but that's a topic that the selectmen are taking up this evening. And the other lines are, again, I mentioned the 200,000 to do with the regional dispatch grant. So that's come out. And then there are a handful of other smaller reductions that we've been able to make to present what appears to be a balanced budget, but I know there's more work to be done with respect to the school assessment.
Okay, great. Thank you, Todd. That's the budget in a quick overview. Did anyone have anything that popped up in that overview that they wanted to ask Todd about while we have him on the call? Not something necessarily that we need to debate right now, but something while we have Todd's undivided attention that we can ask him.
I'm good.
Mike, go ahead.
No, I just, in clarity on what you were just talking about with the regional school, where that one column has it, the administration recommends is the $800,000 less. I guess I'm just looking for clarity to kind of make sure I understand this. That's because of the amount, the override failed, but assuming the 50-50 were passed by both towns?
If the 50-50 were passed by both towns, then we still need to come up with that 800 from other areas.
Right.
But, whether it's new sources or reduced budgets.
So, Mike, I guess I had the same discussion with John, with the town administrator. Basically, that 10.4 is what we can afford to present a balanced budget with the numbers we have right there. With the rest of it being balanced, that 10.4 is what we can afford without going into the red, because there's, right now where there's so much up in the air going forward, whether it be both of those agreements. We just, the town administrator and I and Todd had discussed that we can shift that. But at this point, if that's what we can afford, and there's going to have to be a major shift after town meeting, depending on what the town votes to do, then that's when we'll have to go back and take a deeper look at shifting funds from other departments should they come back and reject that number.
Okay.
And I forgot to mention one other thing. All of the existing union contracts expire today. And so this budget that's before you has no provision for any cost of living adjustment for any of the town employees. Certainly if they were entitled to a step within their contract, those are built into the budget, but no cost of living. And nothing provided, we often have a placeholder earlier in the process, but that's been removed in order to balance the budget.
That being said, is there kind of a general ballpark number of, it's a lot of variables, I understand, but if 2.5% across the board were instituted, coupled with some steps, I want to say 45 or 50,000 might be the number. Is that in the zip code of what we're talking about? Just so it's something we can think about potentially planning for, or?
Sure. From memory, Mike, every 1%, and again, this would be for all town employees. So police, fire, highway, clerical and department heads, it's about 65,000 for every 1%.
Okay. And again, nothing that, trying to hold you to, but just trying to get an idea of,
Sure.
We get to numbers that we think we can be comfortable with, and then say, oh, by the way, we've now got to account for, $65,000, $120,000, $130,000 of additional expense.
Right. Yeah, we're in a tough position.
Other questions for Todd?
No,
Pat.
just appreciate highlighting the stuff that's to make it easier rather than going line by line to see what's changed.
Sure.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure. I'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay, thanks, Todd. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, Patrick, you're still with us?
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure since we can't see you, but we can hear you. Okay, so as you can see, they've done the town administrator, the town accountant have done a lot of preliminary work. I think that knowing where we stand on the override is sort of where we're going to move forward. We're going to have to move forward because we're not sure now. It goes to the vote at both town meetings to accept the 1-year agreement or not. So that's going to directly shift the numbers as well. So that's sort of how now, we can present a different number to town meeting, but that's how the town accountant and the town administrator came to that number. Level funding pretty much everything and what we can afford based on that, just because so much of it's up in the air. We were looking at ways we can't go to, we have to, our mandate is to go to town meeting with a balanced budget. So this is a balanced budget. It's not saying this is what we're going to send to town meeting, but this is a balanced budget. So it's something to work with, something to start from. And, once we can take a deeper dive and give everyone a chance to look at it, there's still a lot of uncertainty. So to start shifting massive sums of money around we sort of erred on the side of caution for now. So questions on that?
No, that makes sense for sure.
All right. And everyone is following. The colors came through on the copies I sent you with regard to the changes on the sources and uses, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, it's very faint, but there's some significant impacts on there. A 12% reduction in state aid is significant. I mean, if you look at new growth, significantly less than what we're used to. It's always interesting to look at that 2.5% increase too, to show that the town is only growing by $600,000 and change. If you combine the 2.5% increase and the new growth, it's not that much. So that's where we are right now. Any questions about sources and uses or the operating budget right now? What are
Yeah, Kevin, the
Mike,
only thing I have is the highlighted for the subsidies. Those were the numbers that were originally discussed, but those are still being discussed and potentially could change.
So the recreation subsidy has been reduced, right? It was let me pull up if I have the previous one handy. I was just discussing it last night. Give me 1 second, Mike, and I'll pull that up. So for recreation, it was originally 104,000 they were asking. In taxation, they've reduced that to the number that's on the sources and uses, which is 87,000.
Okay.
And basically that would be the reduction, like that we looked at doing. I don't know if it was last town meeting or the town meeting before, and reevaluating in October to see where we are. Right now, it looks like the Cove is still closed, the camp is still closed. I don't know. I had a meeting last night with the recreation committee. They're still trying to figure out, if they even were to open it, the best practices to put in place. So I still think we're a little ways away from that. Obviously, the revenue is going to be down significantly. So the one that's still up for discussion is that the solid waste subsidy, Mike, that's labeled in yellow, and that is right now that's the full amount that's due to come from taxation, 176,000.
Right.
So I think they are in some further discussions with the Board of Health to try and reduce costs as much as possible at the transfer station, which we all know really the only way you can do it is by reducing the hours. But that's the town administrator and the selectmen are working with the Board of Health on that.
On that same front, just because I don't remember off the top of my head, did we engage in a new contract, and is part of that the reason that number hasn't changed is really driven by the new hauling fees?
I don't know what's the sort of contractual agreement they came to. I know the hauling fees increased significantly, but I don't know the length of the contract. It's I can check with.
It's the length isn't important as much as that. I guess my point is, are we still in that couple of months at a time until we can work out the right number, or did they finally reach an agreement and said this is what it's going to be?
That I don't know. I can ask that question.
At the end of the day, I seem to remember we went from not paying anything for the recycling to like $65 a ton, and that's probably driving the bulk of those expenses. And I want to say, was it like 95 bucks a ton for regular trash?
That sounds in
Yeah.
the ballpark. I don't want to. I'm not 100% sure. So, but it sounds in the right vicinity. I can ask that.
Yeah, and you guys know how I feel about the enterprise funds. I don't necessarily know whether closing it. Yes, you're going to save some on the salary, but how much of the trash is that going to go down because it's not open? I guess that's the ultimate question, because that number I think The trash that's going there, I think, is still going to be there, whether it's open 3 days or 5 days. And in the savings from the labor part of it, I mean, compared to the hauling costs, it's not a fair comparison.
Right. Yeah.
It's
No,
something, but it's
yeah, the salary expenses are a drop in the bucket compared to the amount spent on hauling it away. And that was, that's a discussion that we've had with the town accountant before, and the town administrator as to, is this really, neither of these two enterprise funds have any retained earnings. So they are what they are right now.
Yeah.
My fear is that, as you said, the transfer station is going to continue to get more expensive, until you can negotiate a longer term contract, which, we don't have any control over that. But I always look at it as it should just be a line in the town budget and make it faster and easier for everyone. But
yeah.
that's okay. Oh, there he is, Mr. McCormick. You're on mute, sir. Do you know how to unmute? It's down at the bottom. Just roll it over, and the microphone will. I don't know. Ken, can you hear us?
Yep, I'm in now.
Okay, there you go. There he is. He's in. Perfect. Okay, so that's where we are. Ken, you missed sort of the review by the town accountant, but what I will say is, if you look at the sources and uses document, which I sent, he highlighted in green the dollar values that have changed. The ones in yellow have yet to be finalized, so we're still working on those.
Okay.
So you can I don't know if you had a chance to look at those and
Yep,
Okay. Do you have any questions off the top?
I don't.
Okay. Fairly straightforward. And then we moved on to the town accountant gave a review of the general fund, and with the adjustments made in green. And so, that what's in the administration recommends is the town accountant and the town administrator have recommended that number. It is, and at those levels, at those funding levels for each one, it is a balanced budget.
Perfect.
So that change, that will change depending on what happens at town meeting with regard to the school. Or we could be in and out of town meeting very quickly and sending this budget off to the respective to the school committee for approval. So that was sort of the basic review of that. Any questions on those before we move on to go to the next topics?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none. So if you take a look at the special town, July 2020 special town meeting. As town accountant mentioned, they have significantly reduced the number of articles on there and kept the major ones, the ones that really need to be done this year. So it's it's less of an impact. And I will ask for an updated narrative. I don't think it will have changed. The numbering is probably different, but we'll probably get an updated narrative in the next day or so. Questions on the special town meeting?
Not at this point.
Hearing none. Let's take a look at the annual town meeting. Again, fairly straightforward. Still probably some changes coming after tonight's selectmen meeting. I know they're talking about pulling one or two of these articles, I believe, or adjusting them down. So what we're going to look at may be different from what we're seeing here. Any questions on the annual town meeting matrix?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, any general discussion of the FY 2021 budget? Anything? The floor is open for sort of general discussion. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I mean, at this point, we have so many variables out there with depending on what gets pulled off. If the Board of Selectmen, vote to remove some things that potentially, the potential money to be spent or whatever on those items is still eventually out there if they find it from different sources. But even that, there's such a big what if now with the school budget. I think we've kind of gone through most of this stuff at this point, so it's kind of a waiting game now, I'm guessing.
Yeah, Pat, that's a great point, and it was where there are still so many variables to consider. It was one of the reasons that in my discussion with the town accountant over the last few days that we didn't want to start doing a lot of shifting until we really have to. We could try and adjust that gap based on what we think is going to happen, but in this case, we really don't know what's going to happen. So we have to present a balanced budget, and if everything marches along, this is a balanced budget to present, and see what happens. The town still has some significant votes to take at town meeting, outdoor town meeting.
That'll be a new one.
Yeah.
That will be a new one.
Kevin, to follow up on Patrick's point, let's just assume some of this stuff gets pulled in the short term, and there's a couple $100,000 of free cash that was going to fund capital improvements. I'm against the idea, but is this kind of building a little safety net just in case we have to try to plug something in the short term, or what's the kind of general thought on some of this?
So
my only concern for asking the question is what happens if we get to fall where we're deferring it to fall and then we don't have the ability to do it. And now you've got capital projects that needed to get done that now are going to get pushed out another year plus.
Right. No, that's a valid concern. As you mentioned, they're looking at taking, we'll say, the most important capital projects and continuing with them, while at the same time, minimizing our use. We still don't know what that free cash number is. We have an idea, but where the revenues are down, we really don't know. The other thing is, I have said the same thing and Todd and I have talked about this in length, that running an operating budget off of free cash, regardless if it's a 1-year fill, is just not sustainable. We need a sustainable plan, even if that plan is a bad plan. Even if it's not the best interests, to plug it with a 1-year hole, it's chasing the rabbit, and will be even tougher shape next year.
Well, that's kind of where I'm going with this. Again, I don't agree with the concept, but I have kind of I'm trying to read the tea leaves here. Of they put some money aside, we're not going to do this, we're going to put this aside, and I'm kind of seeing that could be a grab to fill a shortfall. And to your point, you have a free cash number that's changing, could go up, go down. It's not recurring, stable revenue that you're trying to plug into a budget that theoretically, not only is going to be the same, but more than likely is going to continue to increase. So
Yeah.
on the underlying point, I'm right there with you. This kind of is shaping up as to, I see where this might be trying to go.
I think part of the plan is also to, the entire town is going to have to take, if this budget isn't accepted and we have to take full statutory method, we could end up being in a situation where the entire town has to take, a reduction. So I think this is sort of a preemptive step to say, usually the free cash that we have is used for all manner of projects. So I think they're setting a tone by saying, all the non-essential items are on hold until we know what we're doing with this budget. It's not necessarily teeing it up for use of free cash, but I think they're saying, hey, listen, all non-essential things are being put on hold until we can sort through where we are with this budget. Maybe it all depends on what action the school committee takes, to be honest, once we turn this budget back to them, because the budget we have right now is a balanced budget. We can send it to the school committee, hope that through negotiations that if they accept the number, they accept the number. If they don't accept the number, then we're back at it again. There's still some questions to be answered on both sides. The town of Hanson has to vote to approve the 1-year deal. The town of Whitman has to vote to approve the 1-year deal. There's a lot of, as Pat said, there's a lot of variables out there that we still don't know. So I was actually, I thought it was a good way to proceed was sort of go with a balanced budget, reduce costs where we can. Not that there were a lot across the town departments. There was pretty much level funded. You heard him say it doesn't include certain cost of living increases. Those are all out. So we're looking at almost level funding the town from last year to this year, and seeing what happens.
They had, was free cash not at one particular point a couple of weeks ago, 600,000?
I don't remember what it was.
Does that sound familiar? I thought I ran some sheets off at our the last set you set out was like 600,000 that they were giving out in free cash.
Yeah.
I agree with you that we shouldn't use it to fill in a budget because it's so, vague if you'll ever get it back next year, whatever you'll get. But with that being said, if this doesn't pass or doesn't work by both towns, we're going to have to use something to fill the budget, to fill the gap. And that 600,000 or whatever the number is, minus the important things, I think would get the job done and buy us a year to get through it. I agree with you that it's not the thing to do, but I think in this particular time, it might be the thing to do.
Yep. So, like I said, the free cash value, they're still trying to zero that in, and it probably was higher, Ken, in the last one. But like I said, they pulled a lot of items out of this already until we can settle on an operating number.
Got it. Yeah, I think you did the right thing. You get a balanced budget, we ship it over to them, and it's kind of up to the school and, like you said, both towns to decide what they're going to do. I don't think that's going to work, being part of that committee. There's hatred all the way around, I think. So I can't see us coming to any type of agreement, to be quite honest with you, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, if you look at that, sources and uses, if we have to go full statutory, that's where we'll have to, that number will jump up to what, 11.4, I believe.
Yeah.
So, but that's where we are
that
for now.
That might have been some of the confusion too among folks going to the polls this past weekend. I heard from a lot of people that were, oh, well, we're going to vote this down. We're going to vote it down from just the school budget. But that's not necessarily the case, right? We might get a number handed in our lap that's going to cause us to have to make hard decisions all around to these other things. And people, I don't think everybody really realized that. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a lot of them did realize that. And that's what they wanted. But it'll be interesting. I mean, it's up to the folks to come to town meeting and show up to town meeting, even though it's outside this year, and get their voices heard, right? And see what happens after that. It's just such a backwards year.
No.
Yeah,
Patrick,
no.
To your point, I'm sorry to interrupt, Kevin. To your point, I kind of heard the same thing where it was people asking me, what should I do? And I said, here, this is what happens if it passes. This is what happens if it doesn't. And the responses I got were, oh, I didn't realize about the potential cuts. That's good information. And again, that was only 2 or 3 people, very small sample. But to Patrick's point, I kind of heard the same thing. And I think this goes to just the overall, how the town was informed about both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah,
completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, this is the valid method for conveying the number. Normally, I think those of us who have done this for a couple of years now, usually we're locked in step with Whitman on the number, which is why there's never, we give a number back, the school committee negotiates another number. We usually come to somewhere right in the middle. It's, one way or the other. This year with the change in assessment, this is the method we're going to have to do. But there was a lot of people who were under the assumption that we could just give a number, and then not realizing that that number can be number can be rejected. They can reject that number and send it back to us with the full assessment, and we make our way towards a super town meeting and the follow-on steps. So
Yeah, it was done somewhat poorly, because I got the same thing that, if we don't get the 800,000, that's why we're losing 117 teachers. I'm like, well, that's really not the reason you're losing 117. You're losing 117 because we don't know what the cherry sheets are. And we won't know what they are until September. So the 117 people could be hired back September 2nd, depending on what the state gives us for Chapter 70 money.
right.
The 800,000 was the assessment that we needed to pay to get from one method to the other. That's what we voted either for or against, was that deduction. It really wasn't a staffing deduction.
Yeah, I think the 117 scared people, but that's not actually like reality. I think it was 40 or, a little over that. And then, but
yeah,
I think it's a tough time of year too, like midsummer, where people are they're checked out anyway at this point. So.
Yeah, I get it. I think you've seen my take on it. I'm not a big fan of the override. I wasn't. I believe we should be doing other things to force Whitman to do certain things, and I don't think we can if we. I don't want to hold the budget hostage, but I don't think we can force them to do something if we. It might not be the word cave. And if that passed, we would have caved, and then I don't think there's a way around forcing them to look at a DOR reassessment of wealth in both towns. I don't think there's a lot of things we can't do if we okayed that.
Yeah.
I think by not okaying it the first time around, I think gave boss a little time to force their hand to do something. I'm not saying in the end we won't have to cave, for the betterment of all departments and the kids and the teachers in the school. But I don't think we should have done it right away. That's just my take.
Anyone else? Any other comments on the budget process, budget cycle? I'm going to give us, there's still some items up in the air. I'm hoping that the selectmen will finalize the warrants at least tonight, and we can start voting a warrant next week.
One question, Kev, on the communications in public safety.
Yes.
What is that 232, considering today was our first day in Hanson?
So we are getting the grant that will cover that. The town accountant they were informed that we're going to be recipients of that grant.
Yep.
And that first 232 will come out of the communications line, supplemented by that grant.
Okay, perfect. So that isn't in that budget, that we were waiting for the grant to go through, which we kind of knew was going to go through anyways. And then once that was through, that would come out.
Correct. Correct. So,
All right. I just saw it there. I just wanted to make sure.
yep. No, they received the notification that they were going to get, so they felt comfortable enough adjusting that line.
Okay, I feel better about that because I heard Todd use the word "we are eligible for that grant," and I was getting a little nervous about whether we actually had it or that we are eligible for it. And what happens if you get down the road and go, "Sorry,
Yeah,
no
so
check
it's
for you," and now we've
it's a
got
five-year
another
5-year
200,000.
grant. It's a 5-year grant that 911, the state communications 911 system will pay. You pick it up after the 4th year. You start to pick up a certain amount, but for 4 years you don't have to pay anything.
Right. And that's what Todd was saying. He didn't if it was 4 or 5 and at what percentage you started jumping on board and paying. So,
Yeah.
but those are the cost savings from that.
Good. All right. Well, that's 232,000 somewhere. I mean, every dime is important. Considering, I think all of us went through the budget and cut. I think at one point it was 1.2. I think I cut 6 or 7% out of everybody's department that really couldn't afford it. So,
Right. And so, I don't again, if the selectmen will finalize the warrants, I feel we can maybe move forward with doing voting some of our lines next week, depending on where we are. I'll tell you my feeling on it right now is we have a balanced budget. I don't want to go tinkering with it too much. That's just my feeling. If everyone feels otherwise and we want to start moving money around, but I think this is the budget we present and we go and we see where we go from here.
yep, I'm 100% on board.
Too many variables out there to start messing with things.
Yep, I agree. It's balanced. Send it in, and if it comes back and we got to adjust it, we'll adjust it. But no sense in messing with it now.
Anyone else? Amy, Pat, Mike?
No.
No, we got a placeholder to meet the obligation to show up with a balanced budget, and as this stuff changes, we'll adjust as we need to.
Okay. All right, then we will move on to our final agenda item of the night. It is the end of the year, and our final agenda item is the reorganization of the committee. So, that being said, we need a chairman, vice chairman, and clerk. So, I will open the floor to nominations for chairman.
Kevin, you've done a wonderful job. I'd love to nominate you to continue the role as we've made it to the 5-yard line. I think you should carry it across the end zone as we finish this budget season and move into next year.
There you go.
Yes. Go Kevin.
There you go.
So we have a nomination of myself to remain as chairman. Pat made the motion. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Michelle. All those in favor, I will take a roll call vote. Mike Dugan,
Aye.
Ted McCormick,
Aye.
Pat Powers,
Aye.
Michelle Werdeman,
Aye.
Amy Wright,
Aye.
Kevin Sullivan, aye. I humbly accept another term as chair. The floor is to nominations for vice chairman.
This is a dumb question, but who is it right now?
Pat,
It's Pat.
make a motion to nominate Pat if he's still interested in being vice chair.
I'll second that.
If anybody else wants it, you're more than welcome to, but I am happy to accept and continue on. But if anybody else wants to, you're more than welcome to it.
Nomination has been made. Patrick Powers to serve as vice chairman. Made by Ken, seconded by myself. We'll do a roll call vote. Mike Dugan,
Aye.
Ken McCormick,
Aye.
Patrick Powers,
I'm going to sustain since it's myself.
abstain. Gotcha. Michelle Werdeman,
Aye.
Amy Wright,
Aye.
Kevin Sullivan, aye. Congratulations, Pat.
Woohoo!
I've never
And
been
then-
more honored.
There you go.
And then finally, the position of clerk. I will open the floor to nominations.
Who's the clerk now?
I know. I'm
It's
so
co-
happy.
Kevin.
What's that?
It's Kevin, isn't it?
The clerk is Michelle. So
Oh.
we can-
Well, congratulations, Michelle.
Oh,
you were voted in. Remember, right before we went under lockdown here. So I will nominate Michelle. I will make a motion that Michelle Wordman continue to serve as our clerk.
I hope I'm doing a good job.
Second.
I will second. Well, I think it shows our collaborative nature.
Yeah. We'll do a roll call vote. Mike Dugan,
Aye.
Ken McCormick,
Aye.
Pat Powers,
Aye.
Michelle Werdeman,
Aye.
Amy Wright,
Aye.
Kevin Sullivan, aye. Michelle, congratulations. You are the official clerk again for our committee. So we can, that's all I have on the agenda. I wanted to keep it to about an hour. We're a little over, but we started a little late. Last thing I guess should discuss is meeting next week. We might have, I can't do anything until Thursday, I guess, is my issue. Would Thursday work for anyone?
Thursday works for me.
Thursday should be fine.
That would be Thursday, June 9th.
July 9th.
July 9th, thank you.
Yeah, I might be a little late because my son has baseball till 7.
Okay. That's all right. We can join later. We can
Yeah.
start at 7:30, but at that point I think we'd be ready to go start voting lines.
I may actually be out just for my travels to Buffalo to visit family with my father in the hospital, but I don't know, so don't hold it up because of me. I think we've got enough people to hit the number that we need to start making the vote. So
Okay.
don't hold it off if we got enough people.
Ken, Mike, that date work for you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, any date works for me until I get a call, but yes, that date's fine.
Till we see you go running out the door.
Yeah, right. No, boy,
All
When
right.
do you think they'll start letting us meet in person?
I'm sorry, didn't hear you, Michelle.
Sorry. When do you think they'll start letting us meet in person again? Because we're a small group.
That's a
There's
great
less
question.
than 10 of us.
That's a great question. I'm hoping they'll have made some movement on that tonight. I believe it was part of the agenda. I know
Okay.
Town Hall just got back opened. I think they've been at it 2 weeks now, so they were putting some policies in place to do that. So right now we'll tentatively look at July 9th virtually, but if we can meet in person and we can maintain all the social distancing, masked, or all those requirements, we will look at meeting in person again, because I think actually going through some of the numbers is a little bit easier in person.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I have, ladies and gentlemen. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Mike, seconded by Michelle. All those in favor, Mike Dugan,
Aye.
Ken McCormick,
All right.
Pat Powers,
Aye.
Michelle Werdeman,
Aye.
Amy Wright,
Aye.
Kevin Sullivan. Aye. We are adjourned 8:05. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Aye.
Thanks.